Yes,
Sorry,
sir.
we'll start.
So we'll start at the top. Thank you again for taking a minute out. And I want to begin our conversation with 4 years ago, we were trying to wrap our heads around this pandemic, what it was going to do, how it was going to affect us. Now, 4 years later, how did you make it through? How did it change you?
Oh goodness. Well, there's a few things I do. One of the things I do is present, and I'll tell you this: a lot of presenting didn't happen during that because people were afraid to have people show up. So there was some Zoom going on. There were some things going on. Um, Getting through that, I'm sure, was challenging for anyone. It's a great question. One of the things that's nice, I'll tell you this. One of the things, we do have. One of the things, I have a contract with a company that does solar. And this particular company is a really good company. There's some solar companies that frankly don't take care of people. And the one that I still have a contract with is a really good company, and they do batteries with solar. And so one of the things that helped us through was that a lot of people were kind of freaked out by the whole situation, and they wanted to put solar with batteries. And so that kind of business was actually going gangbusters, even though presenting and doing presentations live was not going as well. So I think to have a business that was or be affiliated with a business and connected to a business that was kind of counter cyclical, I guess you could say, or kind of against the grain, where people were actually wanting to buy things because they were a little bit freaked out about the whole COVID situation, was really good to have during that time.
So
It's a
let's
great
get
question.
well, let's get to the heart and soul. Yeah, I figured we'd hit the ground running. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis. On paper, there's a lot going on, but let's break it down. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day. One of the kids is curious and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
Well, I do public speaking and I do sales. That's, if you want to break it down into really, really uh, basic things. So, I wrote a couple books, and I was lucky enough to write a business book that a Forbes writer picked up and wrote an article on Forbes about, which was helpful. And that got me a little more attention. Did a TV interview and some other things, and was able to present around the country. So I could teach people how to influence and sell in an ethical, honest, good way. And I really enjoy that. I also teach a bunch of real estate agents around the country. I've developed a class for real estate agents because in the past I've sold quite a few homes, and so I teach continuing education in several states throughout the country, and so that's part of what we do. I wrote another book called What I Want My Children to Know Before I Die, which is completely not a business book. It's about what I want my children to know before I die. And that was a kind of more of a dad's book. And so one of the things I'm really passionate about right now is to help dads realize what an opportunity they have to um, how dads are so needed right now. So we could go down, I could talk to you about that. But then we also have another little company that helps companies like the solar company I mentioned before sell. And so gives kind of consulting or helps other companies sell. And so I try to find people who have a good thing and can help and consult with them that way. But as far as the dad's thing, which I was going to tell you, one of the things I'm really passionate about now, a wise man said something like this. He said, if we don't fix marriages and families, everything else we do will be like straightening deck chairs on the Titanic. So
Yeah.
at the moment right now, I really feel like I think that that's true. I think, and I probably didn't quote him exactly right, but I think that that is a true statement that, you see a lot of problems in the world. And if you look at what the root of the problem is, you see people who are rioting, or they're being violent, or they're doing things that are just not helpful. And a lot of those problems could have been solved by a good parent, a good mom, or a good dad in the home saying, hey, we're going to treat people with respect. We're going to follow the golden rule. We're going to do the right kind of thing. But if that doesn't happen, 10 or 20, 30 years later, you see some massive problems. And that's what we're seeing. And so in my view, the root of the problem is you got to have strong marriages, strong families. And so I'm passionate about sharing that message as well. So that was kind of a long, a
No, it's
long.
good. No, 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 that's what I'm looking for. You're right. I mean, I think the thing that keeps there's a moral glue that keeps us together. And, I mean, I know with my son, with friends that he has, there's a lot of dads that just aren't around, have never been around. which just always blows me away. I've always been very involved myself, and I think it's very key. I mean, your kids need to have a good background. They need to have a good foundation by which to go off. And you're right, it is. It's going to be disastrous. It's going to be a Titanic ship if it doesn't get fixed. So good for you. It's very necessary. I'm curious, in the third grade, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was your dream?
I probably wanted to be an astronaut, and I wish I would. I actually just the other day I thought maybe I should try to see if I could reach out to Elon Musk and see if I could be on one of his ships here that's coming up in the next decade or so. But I think I wanted to be an astronaut, and I didn't follow that dream, and part of me still wants to do that.
I my day job is as an IT technician for a school district. So I have a VHS player that can convert things into video. And one of the teachers one year said, I have a VHS of me going to space camp. Remember when that was a big thing years ago? And they actually went and they got to do everything. And it's like there was really actually a ground by which you could say, yeah, my stomach can handle outer space or it can't. You could get weeded out really quick as a kid, you know.
That's interesting. I had a buddy who actually works for NASA, and he did go to space camp when he was young, so that's interesting.
Yeah, it's fun. So let me ask you this. Take me back to your childhood, and how did the seeds of being a public speaker, a writer, a sales pro, how did all of these become a part of your professional life?
Well, this is a super good question. So let me tell you a little bit about my background. I when I was young, I used to like to draw trees, and I used to draw them the way I see them. If you can imagine, I draw every branch, every leaf, all even the veins and leaves. Later, I went to school and I saw how the other children drew trees, and they drew them kind of like maybe you could guess, two lines with kind of a poofy cloud on top. And so I used to draw these really detailed trees with every leaf, every vein in the leaves, everything. And when I went to school and saw the other children drew trees, I stopped drawing them the way I used to, and I started drawing them the way the other children did. Well, I found out later that when my mom saw this, she cried. She really cried. Well, fast forward a few years, I was at a little league game. There's a few different ways, Joe, to play little league. You can actually be good and hit the ball. If you were pathetic like I was, you just hold the bat out and the ball would hit it and drop. It's called a bunt. I had a
Yeah,
bunt, one bunt the entire season. I was pathetic, but I'm not here to tell you how bad I was.
yeah,
Something significant happened after this game. After this game, um, we went home. My mom complained of a very severe headache, and this was not typical of her. At one point, I think she said it was worse than childbirth, which I haven't experienced, but many listeners may have. My dad became concerned. He said, "We're going to take mom to the hospital." And I remember sitting there in the front room of our home, standing there actually, and I gave my mom a hug and told her I loved her, and they drove away. And I was a little concerned because my this hadn't happened before, where my dad had to take my mom to the hospital. She was healthy. Um, but my uncle happened to be visiting us at the time. He just happened to be in the area and was visiting. I went to him and I said, "Is my mom going to die?" And he said, "She's not going to die. She probably just has a migraine." And I said, "Do you promise my mom's not going to die?" And he said, "I promise." Well, I wanted to believe him, and I went downstairs and I climbed up on my bunk bed and started reading a book. I still remember the book. It was a book about squirrels, and just waited, trying to get for my parents to get home, and they didn't get home. Well, the next morning I was a little anxious. I climbed off my bunk bed. I wanted to see my mom and dad, and next to my room there was kind of this long family room. And as I opened the door, I could see my dad on the other side of this long family room. But something was different. My mom was not there. Instead, there was a neighbor and another neighbor and a friend and another neighbor. It seemed like half the neighborhood was at our house. And Joe, as I walked closer to my dad, I could see he had tears on his cheeks. And as I got even closer, my dad he said words I'll never forget. He said, "I think our mom is going to leave us." And I put two and two together, and I went into this panic, and I said, Dad, we got to do something. We got to do something. What can we do for mom? And what had happened, Joe, is my mom had suffered a cerebral hemorrhage, which means a blood vessel in her brain had burst,
hmm,
and she was now brain dead at the hospital, being kept alive by a life support system. A couple days later, I remember being in the hospital. I could see my mom on the machine. She was on an ICU unit. She had tubes coming out of her nose. She was on a respirating machine. She couldn't breathe on her own. And there came time for them to disconnect my mom from this machine because there was nothing they could do. She was brain dead. And I remember when they did, she kind of crinkled up and turned bluish. And I wanted to give her a kiss, but I was afraid to because she didn't look like my mom. So I went and faked it, kissed the air an inch or two from her face, and walked it out. Well, I got to tell you, my mom died that day. And as an 8-year-old boy, I watched my mom die. And here's my question for you, like, and for your audience. How do you think I draw trees now? Well, the answer is I draw them the way my mom would want me to,
Yeah.
the way I see them.
Yeah.
And even right now, I'm sharing my heart with you. I know maybe this wasn't a typical interview for you, but I'm sharing my heart with you today. In figuratively, Joe, I'm drawing trees the way I see them right now.
Yeah.
And that experience, I know how life was before and after my mom died. I know how um, the little things she did that made a big difference. Well, there was a time, maybe I want to say 11 or 12 years ago, I was driving home on a weekend and I just had this clear moment that I knew I needed to be a public speaker and share some things with people. And I didn't know how to be a public speaker. And I went down to this place, this National Speakers Association. There was a lady there who'd been a speaker for some time, and she kind of helped show me how to do it. Um, and anyway, that's kind of a long story, but the point is that really painful experience of losing my mom, I feel like at this point has helped me really, really want to talk to parents and let them know what a huge effect they have. Like little things my mom did that are still profoundly affecting me today. And if I can get that message out to parents and help them know what a huge effect they have. Let me just one more thing, Joe. And I'm sorry I'm talking so much here, but I
No, no,
want
no,
to tell you
you're
one more
good.
thing.
You're good.
I live in America because hundreds of years ago, I had ancestors that decided to get on a boat and come to America. There's more than one. Well, that was a decision they made with their families hundreds of years ago. Now, that decision today, hundreds of years later, affects the language I speak. It affects my economic opportunities. It affects my educational opportunities. It affects my religion. It affects my culture, everything, because people hundreds of years ago came here. Now, not as obvious is what kind of people were they? Were they kind? Were they checked in? Were they drunk? Were they what kind of people? That can be passed down for generations. But here's the thing, Joe. You know what you and I do for work? Nobody's going to care about later. I mean, do you care? Do you know what your great grandparents did for work? And by the way, you have 16 of them. You might know one or two, but do you know what they did for work? And I ask this to everybody, and most people say, I don't know. You don't care if they had the coolest horse or the coolest
Sure.
plow or they had a nice looking fence. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
And that's about how much your great grandkids are going to care about what you did for work. But the kind of parent you are, whether you like it or whether you believe it or not, is going to be passed down
Yep.
for a long time.
That's really, really profound because that's true. I mean, I kind of tangentially because they all came from the old country, I know. But I got to tell you, my best friend from childhood, which we had a lapse and reconvene later in life, he went fishing in Minnesota and had a cerebral hemorrhage and he was found. And it was still to this day, it's like, my God, like I still to this day just think, man, what we're like with Alzheimer's and other things and cancers and whatnot, there's some kind of thing that might be a precursor. But with that, it's sudden. It was just anyway, yeah, it's wild. So I'm curious, who's been that hero for you in your life? Obviously, that was a big blow at 8 for you. Who ultimately was the inspiration for you to become who you are today? To have such a vigor for parenting and for what you do.
Oh, goodness. That's such a good question. There's been so many people who I could call mentors or heroes. Truthfully, there was someone who helped me through a lot of I had a lot of spin-off kind of from this my mom dying that took me a long time to figure out. And I was going through kind of a rocky relationship many decades ago, and ended up that I there somehow got connected with this counselor. Um, and this counselor, over the course of many years, helped me kind of figure out some of the stuff that had plagued me. He's dead now. He's been dead from cancer for a while. But one of the things he really saw the good in me and saw a lot of the stuff that maybe I didn't have as much because of some of the stuff growing up, and helped me through a lot. My dad's been a good guy. My have some great brothers. I have a lot of people in my life I've been blessed to have. So, um, but the point I think is important is that sometimes things that are painful for us, eventually they become our superpower. You know that, like the stuff that people say, well, why is this happening? And in my view, it's just your superpower in embryo. I mean, it's I know as well as anybody that little tiny things that parents do have a lasting effect. And it's because I've had this unique experience where I can remember, you know, things that my mom did. She died at the age of 32. She had 7 kids.
Wow.
There was little comments or things she did, the way she did things that are affecting my kids today, even though she's been gone for, close to 40 years soon. And and so that that painful experience of losing her, I hope I can help a lot of other people and say, you know what, go home and tell the people that you love them. Realize that life is shorter than you think.
Yeah.
Realize that your little daily decisions, you may not think they're having an effect. I promise you, they are having an effect that you have no clue how powerful it will be in the long run.
Yeah. So what is that fire for you every day to get up, to do the work that you do, to be a parent, to do all of these things to make a lasting impact? What's that motivation?
And I guess it's, I think it really is my mom that I just want to leave it all on the field. I want to just leave it all on the field. Like, let's not let the gifts we have go buried. Let's get them out. We've got, whatever time we have on earth, let's share them as best we can.
So if you could meet one person alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating or inspirational, who would it be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
You ask great questions, Joe. I
Thank
got
you.
to tell you this. I love your questions. You are
Thank you.
great. You're a great host.
Thank you. I
Um,
appreciate it.
I think one of the more fascinating people we talked about a little bit before, I think, you see this guy, Elon Musk, he had a really hard childhood too. And here he's doing some amazing stuff. And it's not just with one area. I mean, he's doing all kinds of things. I think it would be interesting to chat with him. But I've also noticed, let me tell you one of the things, there are so many fascinating people who are not in the spotlight when you get to know people. I mean, one of the things I really believe is that, um, if we can treat everyone the same, and so we're not saying, a lot of people say, well, I'm going to treat the senator or the CEO or some rich guy like Elon Musk with a lot of respect and a lot of fascination. And I'm going to treat somebody who maybe isn't quite as high on the social ladder not as well. And that's a form of snobbery. And I can tell you there's so many people who I've met who nobody else would really recognize or know, who have fascinating, amazing, powerful, great things that can help a lot of people. So, just I say that because you talked about being an astronaut, and I talked about some of the things, and I think he's doing some interesting things right now. But our next door neighbor, the people at the end of the freeway ramp begging for food, would have stories that could change you.
Yeah,
You know
for
what I mean?
sure.
People you wouldn't think.
Yeah. I always remember that guy with the golden voice that got discovered and it changed his life. Like he just sang, a small tune and it went viral. And from there, yeah, everybody, we all have stories, I remember years ago, I interviewed a guy by the name of David Amram, and he hung around with all the beat poets and was in the New York scene. And he would go to parties with Jack Kerouac, and Kerouac was always talking to the custodian or the maintenance guy in the building. He was this big literary figure that everybody was doting over, but he really wanted to be with the heart and soul of the people that are out there. And I think that's very important. Because I would imagine these CEOs and these high-end people probably get tired of being kowtowed to all the time, you know?
Oh yeah,
There's gotta be
sure.
a part of them that's like, "Come on, just let it out, just be real," you know?
I think you're exactly right. I also think, I read this story online where these people were talking about how much respect they had for this. There was the director at this big company, or maybe he was a C-level guy, I can't remember. Somebody high up in this company, and it was a Christmas party. And after the Christmas party, this guy grabs a mop and just starts mopping the floor, you know,
Yeah,
and just showing that kind of humility. We're like, I'm willing to, and they just said how much they respected this guy for being willing to, I didn't expect someone else to do it. He just grabbed a mop and
yep,
started doing it. And that made everyone respect him because he wasn't trying to be high and mighty and have
yeah,
people, it's that servant leadership kind of thing where the best leaders actually act like servants,
yeah.
I think.
You know, that's the thing I love about being in jazz radio. Jazz musicians, the higher up you go, they are the most humble, grounded people that are looking out for the next generation, kind of in that parental way. It really is refreshing. And I had no idea. I'm talking Sonny Rollins all the way down. These guys have talent that's unreal, but they're grounded. I call them the Jazz Jedi Council. They're all the guys in
I love
class.
that. I love that.
They're
Yeah, I
just
love that.
their chlorides level high. They're ready to go, but they're just grounded and it's good. So of all of the things that you've accomplished and evolved into, and everything that you've had to overcome with losing your mom at such a young age, of everything that you've done, what are you the proudest of?
Tell you, just being a dad is, I think that I'm proud of my kids, proud of my, got a great wife. I've got great kids, and we always, we haven't always been, we have, it ebbs and flows. Sometimes we're doing great. Sometimes we're not doing as great from a financial standpoint, but the fact that I could be a dad, um, and I have, uh, kids who still look up to me. I've got one. I Sometimes as they get to be teenagers, they might not look up to you quite as much for a little while there. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, being a dad is the title that makes me the happiest, frankly.
You know, years ago, there was somebody that got hired at one of the elementary schools as a nurse, and they called in the helpline. And I recognized who it was, and I was like, "Hey, by the way, I'm your neighbor from across the street." And she was like, "Oh, I thought you were a stay-at-home dad because I'm always outside running around with the kids." That was one of the best compliments I ever got in my life. I'm like, "My God, how could she think that with, because I'm a busybody." It's like,
What a great compliment to you.
yeah, it was awesome. I just got off and I was like, "That's wonderful," because that's what I want to do. I want to be there, and yeah. So it's a good thing. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, gosh, Joe, you have the best questions. I love this.
Thank you.
Well, I'm like anyone else. I am trying to do my best, but I oftentimes, well, that's not true. Sometimes I really blow it, right? I'm a guy who's like anyone else, trying to figure out how to do the best I can in life. And sometimes I do okay at it, sometimes I don't. I struggle with things just like anyone else. Um, I blow it some days, and some days I do pretty well. And I'm just trying to make each day a little bit better, like everyone else out there. So that's how I see myself. I don't I'm grateful that I've been blessed with such a good family. I'm grateful for a great wife, great kids. And I hope that I can be the best dad and that I can. I would say though, in my view, a lot of people say, well, I have my career and I'll be a dad on the side. And I'm trying to make sure I keep that, like, my dad, being a dad and a husband is my main career. And I
Yep.
have this other career to help support the main career. Right. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So,
no, and I love the way you describe great grandparents. No one's gonna give two flips really at the end of the day. I mean, there's things that will have lasting impact, but really is about your kids. Well said. Lots of things I'm gonna remember from this. But before we get out of the digital door here, I want to do the good business. If anyone wants to reach out, hire you, get your books, any of the good business, where do they go?
well, I got two sites. You can go to eksane.com/subscribe. You can get some dad tips. You can also go to my business site, which is xfactoredge.com. I do a little keynote speaking at eksinfluence.com. So those three sites.
Right on, man. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for being raw and open and putting it out there. I really appreciate it. And keep doing the good work.
Joe, thank you. You're a great host. Thanks for asking such great questions.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.